Thousands of Venezuelans have crossed in recent months into the neighboring countries, fleeing the economic meltdown and political turmoil at home. The country's economy has gone into a nosedive, and sporadic waves of protests are dogging the government of President Nicolas Maduro. As part of a new economic package to harness hyperinflation, Caracas is now going to issue new banknotes after knocking 5 zeros off the bolivar, its crippled currency. Critics have attacked the measure as inadequate in the face of inflation that went up over 82,000% in July. The International Monetary Fund predicts the inflation in Venezuela will reach 1,000,000% this year. In its fourth year of recession, the country is crippled by shortages of basic goods and paralyzed public services. The mass exodus has brought on further economic problems as the South American country is lacking an adequate labor force.
Like any monoculture, Venezuela's economy was not safe because it was all built around oil and the industries that are around it. So Venezuela's government and the governing socialist coalition are responsible for the fact, and this goes back to Hugo Chavez's administration, that they built the economy around one commodity. And so I think that more than anything else is the reason why they are, for their part, to blame for the complete economic collapse of the country.
President Maduro says he is the victim of an economic war tailored by Washington to undermine his administration through sanctions and price gouging. This year, Trump imposed more economic sanctions to further choke off funding to Maduro's government. The ensuing chaos has forced many to flood out of the country in search of work, food, and other basic needs.
United States and the Venezuelan opposition members that are aligned with the United States or living in the United States, and that is they want the complete collapse of the government. They don't want things to get better because then the government may have a chance of surviving. They want this to keep going into the ground, getting as worse as it could possibly so that this government falls, and then they will step in. But the U.S. has been trying to, it's not even really a secret, the U.S. has been seeking regime change in Venezuela for probably, since 1999, but they've just been remarkably ineffective at doing so.
The U.S. under Trump has been imposing sanctions against other nations like never before. Sanctions on Russia, Turkey, and Iran, to name a few, have been part of Trump's economic war against emerging markets. In a controversial move, he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal in May just to reimpose sanctions on the Islamic Republic.
The unfortunate situation in Venezuela is that it doesn't have the luxury of being as isolated from the United States economy like North Korea. North Korea is almost completely unaffected by the United States economy. Russia is large enough that it has yes, it does have a reliance on oil, but it has so many other industries. Venezuela, like we said, did not develop these other industries, and that's why it made it vulnerable to these economic attacks, if we want to call them that the Western Bloc has been placing on Venezuela and its leftist allies.
Once the richest country in Latin America, Venezuela is now dealing with one of the worst economic disasters in the world and suffering from its severe consequences, thanks mostly to U.S. addiction to sanctions.